In 1997, a convoy of trucks dumped 12,000 tons of rotting orange peels onto protected Costa Rican land. That's enough citrus waste to fill 400 Olympic swimming pools. Environmentalists called it corporate sabotage. A lawsuit shut the whole operation down after just 1 year. The land was abandoned, fenced off, and forgotten. But 16 years later, when scientists finally returned expecting to document an ecological disaster, they couldn't believe what they found. Keep watching, because what happened next is rewriting everything we thought we knew about saving our planet. Did you know the world loses 10 million hectares of forest every single year? That's an area roughly the size of South Korea, vanishing annually, stripped away by agriculture, logging, and development. But here's the part most people don't realize. Once tropical forest is gone, it almost never comes back. The soil turns to lifeless clay within just a few years. Traditional reforestation efforts fail over 80% of the time in these degraded zones. Scientists have spent decades trying to crack this problem, and for most of that time, they considered these dead lands permanently lost. Costa Rica knows this tragedy better than almost anyone. By the 1980s, the country had lost over 80% of its original rainforest. What remained were vast stretches of abandoned cattle pasture, land so depleted that farmers called them green deserts. Nothing would grow. No amount of planting or fertilizing seemed to help. The soil had simply given up. The traditional solutions all fell short. Planting seedlings by hand cost fortunes and failed more than 70% of the time in poor soils. Chemical fertilizers poisoned rivers and only provided short-term gains before causing long-term destruction. Leaving land alone to recover naturally took over 100 years to show any results, if ever. Controlled burns destroyed tropical seed banks. Importing topsoil was logistically impossible at any meaningful scale. Every method either cost too much, took too long, or created entirely new environmental damage. But something else was happening in Costa Rica during the 1990s. The country had transformed itself into a global ecotourism model by paying landowners not to cut trees. It was working beautifully for standing forests, but the degraded pastureland refused to bounce back. Meanwhile, the juice industry was exploding, and so was its waste problem. Here's a number that will surprise you. When you process an orange for juice, 50% of the fruit becomes garbage. Peels, pulp, seeds, membranes, all of it heads straight to the landfill. Orange processing plants were drowning in waste, and landfills across the country were overflowing. Burning the waste caused devastating air pollution. Then came the idea that would change everything. What if this mountain of rotting garbage could actually heal the land? In 1997, Princeton researcher Daniel Janzen proposed a radical experiment to the Del Oro Juice Company. The plan sounded almost insane. Del Oro would donate 12,000 metric tons of orange waste, plus a prime piece of forested land, to the Guanacaste Conservation Area. In exchange, they would receive free, legal dumping rights on a degraded 3-hectare test plot, roughly 7 acres of dead pasture land that nobody thought would ever recover. The vision was audacious. Janssen believed industrial organic waste could jumpstart dead ecosystems, rebuilding in years what nature would take centuries to accomplish. If successful, this single experiment could revolutionize global reforestation. The logistics were staggering. Over the course of 1 year, 1,000 truckloads of orange peels and pulp traveled a dedicated route from the Del Oro processing plant, covering more than 50 kilometers each trip. Workers spread the waste across the test plot in layers up to 1 meter thick. To put that weight in perspective, 12,000 metric tons is equivalent to 2,000 African elephants dropped onto one small patch of earth. The science behind it was surprisingly elegant. Orange peels are incredibly rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic carbon, the 3 essential building blocks of healthy soil. As the waste decomposed, it would theoretically rebuild topsoil in years instead of centuries. The citric acid would break down clay particles. The organic matter would feed billions of soil microorganisms, and the nutrients would create the foundation for new plant life. Researchers established a control plot nearby, identical degraded land with zero intervention, so they could compare results over time. They installed soil sensors, weather stations, and camera traps. They cataloged every existing plant species and recorded near-zero biodiversity before the dumping began. The monitoring was set to continue for decades, but critics were furious. Environmental groups warned that the acid would sterilize the soil permanently. Others predicted invasive species would take over. Local communities complained about the overwhelming stench, and a rival juice company, Tyco Fruit, saw an opportunity to attack. In 1998, site, Tyco Fruit filed a lawsuit claiming illegal dumping on protected conservation land. They argued that coating parkland with industrial waste, regardless of intent, constituted environmental destruction. The Costa Rican court sided with Tyco Fruit. After just 1 year of operation, the entire project was halted. All plans for expansion were abandoned. The monitoring equipment was left in place, but no one was allowed to add more waste or continue the experiment. The site was locked, fenced, and forgotten. Daniel Jansen returned to Princeton. The scientific community moved on to other projects. Most assumed the experiment had failed before it ever really began. The 3 hectares of orange-covered land sat untouched, slowly rotting under the tropical sun. 16 years passed. In 2013, Princeton researchers Timothy Troyer and Jonathan Choi traveled to Costa Rica to document what they assumed would be environmental damage. They had GPS coordinates. They had old photographs. They had detailed maps from the original researchers. But when they arrived at the site, something seemed wrong. They couldn't find the orange dump. It had completely vanished. Where rotting peels once covered the ground in meter-thick layers, dense jungle now stood. Trees reached toward the sky. Vines wrapped around trunks. The forest floor was alive with vegetation. Troyer and Choi initially thought they were in the wrong location. They checked their coordinates 3 times before accepting the truth. The garbage dump had transformed into a thriving forest. The measurements that followed shocked the scientific world. The orange peel site had 176% more canopy cover than the untreated control plot. Biomass, the total weight of living plant material, was nearly 300% greater than the abandoned pasture next door. Species richness had exploded. Trees, vines, and wildlife that hadn't been seen in the area for decades had returned. But the most remarkable change was underground. The soil that critics predicted would be sterilized by citric acid had transformed from depleted gray clay into rich, dark, fertile earth. The orange waste hadn't destroyed the land. It had supercharged it. To understand how remarkable this transformation really is, you need to see the comparison. The control plot, left alone for the same 16 years, showed minimal recovery, sparse grass, a few scraggly bushes, essentially the same degraded pasture it had always been. Natural recovery at that pace would take well over a century to produce anything resembling forest. The orange peel plot had accomplished in 16 years what nature couldn't do in 100. The trees weren't just present, they were thriving. Some species that had colonized the site were among the first to return to any degraded land in the region. The wildlife surveys found animals that local farmers hadn't seen since their grandparents' generation. The total cost of this transformation? Roughly $600,000, including transportation, land donation, and monitoring equipment. Compare that to traditional reforestation, which can cost $10,000 per hectare, with a failure rate exceeding 70%. The orange peel method succeeded spectacularly at a fraction of the price. In 2017, the results were published in Restoration Ecology, and the story made international headlines. The failed experiment had accidentally created one of the most successful reforestation projects ever documented. What's remarkable is that what happened in Costa Rica doesn't have to stay in Costa Rica. The implications of this discovery are staggering. Consider the numbers. The global food processing industry generates hundreds of millions of tons of organic waste annually. Orange peels, coffee grounds, banana skins, brewery byproducts, sugarcane bagasse, coconut husks. Most of this material ends up in landfills, where it produces methane and contributes to climate change. What if that waste could heal degraded land instead? The economic potential alone is mind-blowing. Food processing industries currently pay billions of dollars annually for waste disposal. Under a scaled version of the Costa Rica model, those same companies could pay to restore land instead, transforming a $200 billion global waste problem into a $50 billion restoration opportunity. Landfills would shrink, carbon would be sequestered, dead ecosystems would come back to life, and the environmental benefits multiply from there. 1 hectare of restored tropical forest absorbs over 10 tons of carbon dioxide annually. Scale this approach across millions of degraded hectares worldwide, and you're looking at one of the most powerful climate solutions ever discovered. Tropical dry forests, among Earth's most endangered ecosystems, could be brought back from the brink. Hundreds of species currently facing extinction could find new habitat. Countries around the world are starting to pay attention. Brazil is exploring applications using coffee and sugarcane waste in degraded Amazon zones. Indonesia has proposed palm oil waste trials for Borneo restoration. India has expressed interest in using coconut and mango processing waste on abandoned farmland. The European Union is funding feasibility studies under its Green Deal initiatives. The beauty of this approach is its simplicity. You don't need advanced technology. You don't need genetic engineering. You don't need massive infrastructure investments. You need trucks, organic waste, and then degraded land. The biology does the rest. Imagine every orange you drink planting a tree, every cup of coffee contributing to forest restoration, every banana peel rebuilding what humanity destroyed. This isn't fantasy. The science has been proven. The results are documented. A jungle grew where nothing should have survived. Daniel Jansen, now in his 80s, continues to advocate for scaling the experiment. His message is simple: we proved it works. Now we need the world to pay attention. Of course, challenges remain. Legal and bureaucratic obstacles have prevented new large-scale projects from launching in Costa Rica. The fertilizer industry sees organic waste restoration as a threat to their $200 billion market. Some traditional conservation groups worry about a quick-fix mentality replacing systemic change. And questions about certification linger. Would waste-grown forests qualify for carbon credits under international standards? But the momentum is building. Every year, more researchers visit the Guanacaste site. More studies confirm the findings. More countries express interest in pilot programs. The original 3-hectare experiment has become a beacon of possibility for environmental restoration worldwide. The site itself is now fully integrated into the Guanacaste Conservation Area, a living laboratory demonstrating what's possible when we think differently about waste and restoration. Where trucks once dumped rotting garbage, birds now nest in towering trees. Where critics predicted ecological disaster, a forest cathedral grew. 12,000 tons of orange peels, 1,000 truck trips, one lawsuit that shut everything down. 16 years of abandonment. And yet, against all predictions, life found a way. The rotting waste didn't poison the soil, it fed it. The citric acid didn't sterilize the earth, it unlocked it. The decomposing organic matter didn't attract pests and invasive species. It attracted exactly the plants and animals the forest needed to heal. We spend billions trying to fix what we've broken. We plant seedlings that die. We spread fertilizers that poison rivers. We wait centuries for nature to recover on its own. And all along, the answer might have been sitting in our garbage. One truckload of trash became a forest. The question now is whether humanity will scale this miracle or bury it in red tape forever. We turned waste into wilderness once. Can we do it again? Everywhere. What do you think? Could orange peels save the Amazon? Could coffee grounds restore Indonesia? Could the garbage we throw away today become the forests our grandchildren explore? Drop your answer in the comments and let's discuss together. And if this story blew your mind, hit subscribe right now, because next week we're covering a project even more incredible than this one. You won't want to miss it.